Welcome back to the Hurdle Rate, episode 28, a very special episode. I'm Tim Kotzman. I'm here with Ben Workman, Matt Cole, Jeff Walton, and Joe Burnett. And without further ado, I'm just going to hand it right over to Matt. Matt, what's been going on the last week?
A lot, except for no sleep is the short version of it. I think this merger between Semler Scientific and Strive, I believe, is, from the words of our banker Cantor, the fastest merger to come together that they've ever seen. And so we'll get into all the details on it, but I just think this is from a speed and execution on both sides and dedication to get something done on this timeline is really unprecedented. And so just to rewind, today's Monday, the 22nd, 1 week ago, last Monday, we were just talking about it was Strive's first day as a publicly traded company. And so it's in Bitcoin world, I always say it's dog years and that things move really quick, but this is taking it to another level, and to the point that I was trying to do research on ChatGPT and I asked our bankers to do some research. We are not aware of another company to go public and then enter a definitive agreement to acquire another company 1 week in U.S. capital markets history. And so I just, I actually, that's a challenge to anyone listening. Can someone find an example of something like that happened faster? Because I can't. So I always have to use the words I believe because I can't definitively confirm it. So would love someone to prove me wrong on that. Or not prove me wrong. So maybe I could take off the I believe and just say it is. But for now it's I believe. But I guess just to take a step back, because I think this is a major, major story, and we'll all get into it. And obviously we have Joe Burnett on, another special guestie from the Semler team. And, would be just pumped to be able to bring him on to Strive full time, and, going to think more highly of him. But, I've been of the belief that some consolidation in the space makes sense for a long time. And it comes down to, what is our objectives? Our objectives are obviously to maximize long run value for our shareholders, outperform Bitcoin over the long run, and then over the short run, increase Bitcoin per share. And so when we were looking at Semler, is like, okay, you have literally the second publicly traded US Bitcoin treasury company, super innovative company that, Eric Semler took and saw this as the best direction for their company. And I think that that's a big signal. Just like in a different way, I think that really good podcasters are also a good signal of people that you want on your team. And I know that people don't like that, but it comes down to what I like to say is that give me the athlete that can go talk about it and then I can also do it. That's the person I want in my corner every day versus just one of those things. But I looked at their team, obviously bringing Joe on board, Natalie on the board, and just said, this is a talented group of people. They have a lot of Bitcoin. And what can we do together? And I think what we could do together is we have a much larger stack of Bitcoin. We will be able to access the capital markets in a way that I think would drive down costs for both sides. So I think it's accretive in that way. And then obviously we have a very clean balance sheet. We've laid out ambitions to get a preferred equity out there in 2025. And when you bring more Bitcoin into the equation, that makes that type of an offering even more institutional, right? There's a reason. It's like Strive was, we laid out ambitions before this was even a consideration to do this merger. And I think, that we would have been able to get there, but, there's a reason that it's only strategy in the market right there because of the size that they have, the ability to bring in these large banks, and get these prefs out into the market and their capital structure. And this is going to be able to amplify that for us in a major way. And then lastly, and I just want to tease this, but I want to go deeper later in the podcast. You look at, Semler as is pre-merger and trading below NAV, then that means that the Bitcoin's undervalued and you could write the operating business down to zero. And when we're looking at the operating business side over there, I think the bottom line is that it's on brand for something that actually is really interesting and actually something that's very meaningful to, I know, the Semler team, but also the Strive team. From myself, many of the Strive team members, including people like our CFO, Ben, that came from the biotech industry, and our largest shareholder, Vivek Ramaswamy. People love preventative healthcare. They love getting in front of it. That's actually a much better way to fix health crises in the country, to find a problem earlier versus just go to the doctor and find out you have stage 4 cancer. And so that's a big part of the Maha movement that is near and dear to a lot of our hearts. And I think just, talking about it with a lot of the people, in the Strive circle, I think there's potential to give that operating business a broader mandate around preventative healthcare with a new management team and a broader mandate, and then monetize it. Because my belief is that it's not going to beat the hurdle rate of Bitcoin, but I do believe that there's a lot of way to kind of pivot and rebrand and drop down a company that will have a mission that I think will be meaningful to a lot of people and still make money while preserving our optionality to accrete Bitcoin in a concentrated and focused manner. And so that's, a handful of the things that I thought made a lot of sense. But maybe, to start, kick it over to Joe, and then we'll go around the horn on just different thoughts and have a good conversation on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I can start off. I mean, from my perspective, I'm incredibly excited about this transaction. Obviously, I started the year at a company called Unchained, and I collaborated on a research report with the Strive team, actually kind of revolving around using Bitcoin as a hurdle rate for capital allocation. So it's kind of funny that this podcast being the hurdle rate podcast, and now, after this transaction, being a part of the Strive team. So couldn't be more excited. I watched the last podcast that you guys did with this, and you went through the board. And I think, the Strive board is incredible for a number of different reasons. And I think you guys have that good long-term commitment towards Bitcoin, increasing Bitcoin per share over time. You understand that Bitcoin is the hurdle rate for capital allocation. And I'm super excited this, deal came together, and couldn't be more excited about the future of Strive and similar.
Yeah, what an exciting time. This is this entire weekend, everybody I know is running on super short sleep and just slammed full of caffeine, and wondering if there's going to be a day that we do get some sleep here in the near future. But what a cool case study. I think we're going to look back at this moment in time. I think this is going to accelerate creativity in the space. And one really unique thing, and just thinking about just Semler's last year and a half, going from being a self-proclaimed zombie company to adding Bitcoin to the balance sheet to now being in this position where getting acquired by another company that has Bitcoin on balance sheet. And that adding Bitcoin to balance sheet at the very beginning provided optionality financially for Semler. And so I think there's thousands of companies in the world that are sitting in a very similar type situation, that are zombie companies, and may see this optionality and provide a future roadmap for how to potentially save their company or provide them more optionality and financial strength in the future. So I think this is just an incredibly exciting transaction, very novel, a cashless transaction, so effectively utilizing shares as currency. And I think this will be studied for decades, and I think there will be dozens of transactions that will follow utilizing a similar framework. So it's just incredibly exciting time to be in this space. And this is the digital transformation, I guess, of M&A now. We're just taking it, we're just transforming every component of the business cycle digitally. So
Yeah, I agree, Jeff. And just to add on a few more thoughts, like I think buying Bitcoin on the corporate level requires courage, right? And most large publicly traded companies today are filled with older people that are going to just do what is customary and traditional, and they don't want to rock the boat too much. And it's these zombie companies like Strat or like similar, and other zombie companies around the world that were growth companies at some point, then became value companies, just funneling free cash flow that were used to stack up cash or do stock buybacks or, large dividends. And, Eric Simler being the visionary that he is and the investor that is willing to actually go against the grain and kind of be the natural underdog and, and not just follow what everyone else is doing, this decided to adopt, the Bitcoin treasury strategy in May of last year. And now with over 5,000 Bitcoin on Simler's balance sheet, like it does give Simler like the optionality and like true concrete value in this digital capital asset that sits on the balance sheet. It's worth over $500 million. Like that is incredibly valuable. And I think just like you pointed out, we're going to see more and more zombie companies over time adopt Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. And I think Strive is, obviously going to be leading the way in a really big way. And, the success of strategy and, eventually Strive and all these other Bitcoin treasury companies is just going to show the market that like, hey, we're standing on this Bitcoin bridge that exists. The bridge is very solid. It's not breaking. Come on the bridge with us and you'll perform, pretty well as well. So I'm super excited.
We're going to call you Joe Carnegie now, I guess.
I like it.
Yeah, I think what's so unique about this transaction in particular is it sends a message out to the market. There was this feeling that was going on out there, this sentiment that was happening where people were looking at these companies that started to trade below their net asset value and they started to view them as hopeless and that there was no way out from that it was kind of a death blow for Bitcoin treasury companies. And I think the emergence of M&A in this space is a huge signal out to the market that that's not the case. And the one thing that I particularly like about this transaction and the fact that Strive and Semler here are combining two teams and two shareholder bases that have been passionate about the Bitcoin acquisition strategy and utilizing the capital markets is it signals to the market that it's time to be bold, right? This is the moment to make the moves. Because we've been a little bit spoiled watching strategy at such tremendous scale, I think a lot of people that are looking at this market don't realize how hard it is to achieve that scale. And there can be an understanding out there when you look at two companies like Strive and like Semler, where they both achieve significant scale by any measure in the market, but you realize that when you combine that scale together, you really do become more than the sum of its parts, right? It really ignites the next phase of this strategy to be able to efficiently and effectively access those credit markets to be able to scale in a big way. It pushes you years down the timeline from what it takes most companies to achieve this. Strategy, they had to build up slow. And we forget that because we only see the result, and a lot of people that are coming into the market only see the end result. They missed a lot of the journey. It was really slow and steady for years, and then they really put their foot on the gas, the later half of 2024. So for the new companies that are coming into this market, being that there's really only one primary issuer in the preferred market today with strategy, these other companies are seeing the benefit of achieving scale themselves. And being able to look at these transactions and figure out a way where both shareholder bases win. Right? The acquiring company, you're increasing your Bitcoin per share, you're increasing your NAV, which is going to give you increased leverage capacity to go out into the markets and raise. For the Semler shareholders, it gives them the opportunity to both join in on a ship that can move faster than either ship can move on its own, and they get the benefit of the fiat win on the other side with the share price. So I think that this is just a great example, and to your point, Jeff, this is one that's going to be looked at very closely, particularly in the next couple of months, because I don't think this is the last of M&A in this space. I think this is opening people's eyes to what's possible, and so when Matt was on stage in Bitcoin Vegas saying, we're going to look at things a little different, and we're going to deploy alpha strategies, and we're going to look at ways where we can be creative to really create a growth engine that's going to propel us a decade into the future here. This is what he meant. And being able to do this 1 week in, quite frankly, I don't know how he's standing up. I think we were on a call at 1:30 in the morning, still ironing out the details on this. And so it's just an incredible testament to both the Strive team and the Semler team to be able to come together on a deal like this in such a short time frame that just kicked off really, last Thursday. So it's an incredible timeline to close something like this, and I think it just sets up a really bright future for this combined company.
Yeah, I do want to break that news that has not been released yet, though, and that's that it actually kicked off at the unconference on Wednesday. And then it really picked up steam on Thursday really quick. And the reason is, probably on a normal week after that conference, that would be the top story for us to talk about, because I do think that, and we will definitely get there today, but, what an amazing group of people that you and Ed, Tim, brought together for a conference. And the fact that, I'm not joking when I say this, if I was not in New York at that conference, this would not have happened. And so the value for a quick moving space to be able to innovate, think about the art of the possible. And then, the saying that happens in the space that you can just make things happen. And it started there, and then it started there and it got into a discussion of, we think we could get this done and announced pre-market Monday. And lawyers and bankers are like, what? No way. There's no chance. But the dedication and the willingness to be innovative, right? To not have just an old stodgy exec team or board, frankly, on both sides, but one that says, let's think about this from a business perspective. And if it makes sense, let's run. Let's not sleep. Let's do everything we can, because we do know how quickly that this space moves. And that sort of energy and dedication, I'll tell you that, we've looked at a few of these types of things. We laid out, as when we announced that we were going to do this, that M&A was part of how we would think about building our Bitcoin war chest. And I'll tell you that it's surprising to me from that perspective, but also the asset management side of Strive and doing engagements with corporations over the years, how slow public companies move and how bureaucratic it is and unwilling to work, outside of normal business hours. And that's not what we're seeing here. That's not how we built our team. And I think, and it's why we are, we've talked about why we've made some of the decisions, because of, we have a bunch of sharks on our team, and we're going to be adding to the sharks. And it kind of gets even to another point that I've really been, and thesis that I really believe in. And that's that you don't need a ton of people to run a great Bitcoin treasury company. But if you actually want to be great, you need a real team. Like, it's not two people. If you had two people, this would have never happened. There's so many different decisions. We would have been saddled with convertible debt right now. That'd be an overhang on the company if we had two people. Like, probably would have done a SPAC. Like, all these things, you got to have a team of people that's willing to work hard, that's smart, that's principled, that has high agency. And that's what we built with our team and our board. And in 1 week, you kind of see how we start cooking. And I will make a prediction. We will not be announcing our next merger next week. TBD. If hit me in the Twitter DMs if you want to join the rocket ship with us. But in all seriousness, we just started, and you're starting to see that execution, and I think it's contagious. It's contagious when our board gets in a room together, and that's, in the sports world, what they call chemistry, right? You could put a bunch of smart people together, and they're either greater than the sum of their parts or they're less than the sum of the parts. And that's something that is, dependent on the group of individuals and their character, their work ethic, and their willingness to get together. And we have that right now, and it's fun.
Yeah, it is contagious. And Matt, the leadership that you've and the whole team have shown just reminds me of the words entrepreneur and intrapreneur, right? Maybe right now, Ed and I are entrepreneurs, right? If Ed wasn't back there with the guy by the door, like wrangling people, things would have fell apart. And I'm not embellishing. If I wasn't up there, like opening up sandwiches at lunch, things might have fell apart a little bit. And what I see you guys doing is, I think I'm using the word correctly, intrapreneur. And to the contagious part, I did send a few messages today. I'm like, you guys are connected to Matt, right? So, right? When you lead, it's definitely noticed, and I think there's a lot of people that are noticing it right now. So, and just underscoring how important it is to get together face to face at different events. And I'd be curious to hear Matt or anyone else. How do you guys think about, like, you can't just fly around the world constantly. Well, I mean, you could, but how do you decide between I'm going to this event or I'm going to do a Zoom call? Because I think that's where we are right now, where both are really important to like conserve your energy, but also get out there and make it happen.
I'll kick it off. So I mean, you definitely can't go to every single event. There's way too many. I have found value in giving most events a try and seeing how they work out. Some of the events that I went to this year, I did not think they'd be valuable, but I just went out of curiosity to see, and they were extremely valuable. And so kind of understanding that, but also just having a team. And a team, you can divide and conquer a little bit, where certain people can go to certain events, certain people can go to other ones, and having a presence and building out those connections, I think are extremely valuable, because this space is a very, in a sense, worldwide or in the United States, distributed space that leads to, just for the core business, more of a remote framework if you want to maximize for talent. And my view is you maximize for talent because there's just not enough talent in the space, which is why I hope things like True North can actually continue to be a breeding ground for talent, not just for Stride, but for the entire ecosystem, because there's not enough talent right there. And that, is a longer conversation for another day, but if that's the only thing that True North ever does, I think that is a great service for the Bitcoin community, and also for the people that rise up and prove themselves as podcasters, and then get jobs, right? But I think you got to go out there and you make connections, and it's really hard work. It's hard work, and so you got to stay fresh. People got to take care of themselves, go touch grass, but ultimately, this is a 24/7 market, and so you build a team, set the right incentives, and let them cook.
And the securitization of this stuff is still very trust driven. So there's still a lot of, relationships that you're making with bankers and investors. And especially if you're going this corporate structure route, anybody could go buy, cold storage Bitcoin and go to any one of these and party with their friends that, speak the same language. But a lot of trust is developed in meeting a lot of these people face to face and having conversations in person. It also completely removes the bot element of Twitter. So you actually understand what the true underlying sentiment of people that are working in a space actually is. And that was fascinating to see this last week. Is there was just infectious energy everywhere. There was not a single bot negative person in the entire room of the 500 people that were there. So it's easy to get confused by what the sentiment is on Twitter, and then you go to an event like this and you see the people that are actually working in this space, and it's completely different. So I think it's really valuable to hit them frequently, these different events. But to your point, Matt and Tim, it's just you can't go to all of them. You just got to pick and choose. And if you got a team, it's great, and trust your team to go make relationships and build the whole thing.
I think what's really important is being in the position to be able to capitalize on these types of events. And that's what this was this week. I mean, obviously you and Ed put together an incredibly high quality, high caliber event. I mean, truly, Tim, this was one of the more fruitful events that I'd been to. I mean, the type of discussion that was happening, the participants that were there, the conversations happening out in the common area, were just above and beyond, because you guys curated a small audience of people that were truly interested and dedicated, whether they were investors or bankers or just enthusiasts. So that was really incredible. But I think that there is a lot of value to being present in person. People will come and talk to you about things in person, or the conversations will just naturally go different directions. And much like a lot of the activity in Bitcoin, will happen in 7 to 10 days out of the year, I think you're going to start seeing that in the treasury space too, right? It's these types of events coming together, right, where there's an opportunity for Semler and Strive to connect, because they're both in the same city. They get to have the conversation. You figure out if there's an aligned vision there. Can you see a future where you can generate significantly outsized value by combining forces and becoming one entity? Those are the moments you need to be ready for. And then on the other side of that, you need to have a team that's prepared to act. And there's a lot of unsung heroes on the Strive side of this, like our chief legal officer, our CFO, and there's a whole bunch of people. Those guys have been run ragged and they are still enthusiastic and they are pushing forward and they're making things happen because they understand how important this period of time is, right? We are in that digital capital gold rush right now. And there's a period of time where companies are going to be able to separate themselves from the pack and show the market that you can generate a truly unique value proposition that they're not going to see with any other team. And that to me is what's so important about being able to be present, right? It's that outcome, and it's showing that your team is always ear to the ground. You're looking for the right opportunity, but more importantly, when it comes, you act.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you guys just said. I mean, the unconference for me was an incredible experience. And the fact that this, the seeds for this deal were kind of planted at that conference just kind of shows how great of a conference Tim and Ed, you guys put on. It's incredible. When it comes to like in-person and virtual events, I think it's a balance, right? You can build, incredible relationships in person at these conferences. And then you can also build a lot of relationships really fast, potentially on the internet. And, we are talking about digital capital, the digital transformation of investor relations, and social media and X have become so powerful, and podcasting in general has become so powerful over the last 10 years that it's a very valuable asset that I think has kind of just been undervalued by broad, part of the market for so long, just because it's new, it's experimental, it's, untested, and it makes a lot of sense for, smart, innovative companies to be doing the digital transformation of investor relations and so on and so forth. So I think it's a balance. I've been to many Bitcoin conferences over the years, and they're slowly evolving into, different things. And, I think, Tim, you did a fantastic job with the unconference.
As fiat systems falter, wealth preservation isn't a strategy, it's survival. While the world reacts, Swan Private clients are already prepared. Swan Private builds strong relationships with clients around mutual conviction in Bitcoin's long-term promise. With concierge service, deep expertise, and airtight security, the Swan Private team helps build generational wealth the right way. Swan Private's comprehensive Bitcoin wealth platform serves over 5,000 clients with more than $4.5 billion of Bitcoin purchased to cold storage. Swan Private is built for long-term partnerships. Get started today at swan.com/private.
Tim, do you have any stories to tell from the unconference?
On the spot, stories that are okay for television and YouTube and the internet.
I feel like I do, but I can't tell it.
It seems like PubKey was a big hit as well. I went over there once and it was like line out the door and just absolutely slammed. So there's a couple after party events that were popping off too.
Yeah, and my sincere apologies for not making it there. This similar deal started cooking, and I had to do a change of plans.
Yeah, I think it waxed and waned at PubKey because whenever I got there, I forget what time it was. I just kind of walked right in. You could kind of walk to the back and walk back, and I mean it was very busy, but it wasn't line out the door. So I think hats off to the PubKey crew that kind of said, "Hey, we've dealt with parties of 500 people, and there might be a line out the door, but when it's that busy, people don't like stay for days on end." So it just kind of all works itself out. So I think that was super cool. We had an event where we had a few Bitcoin treasury companies present like a 5-minute presentation followed by 5 minutes of Q&A with some accredited investors, qualified purchasers on whatever the morning was after Thursday morning, and that was standing room only in the back. So that was pretty cool to just see people showing up in person for something like that. Not surprising, but very cool. The event itself was, Adrian took it to the next level. I posted late last night, or maybe reposted this morning, that one of the other media outlets reached out to me, and I kind of posted what they said, which was something to the effect of, this guy has been in the Bitcoin event space for a long time, and he said, you guys just took it technically to the next level, and that was all Adrian. Like, I saw the mock-up, but when I saw that like in the round stage with the the letters on it, I was like, this is going to be wild. And then I told a few people the night before, I said, I have 3 goals for tomorrow in no particular order. I want to make sure Michael's happy. I want to make sure the audience in the room is happy. And I really hope the live stream just looks incredible. And I think hopefully we just knocked it out of the park on all of those. I was basically just walking around the entire day saying to people in the room, have you seen the live stream? And they're like, no, I'm here in person. I'm like, it looks awesome. So Adrian and his team, hats off. It definitely was noticed, and super excited to be working with Ed and Adrian and Ted and Annalise and the team. And really hats off to Ed. Like, he pulled together Ted and Annalise, and I didn't know who these cats were, right? I was like, oh, what? We're doing a conference? And these, great. Go. I mean, there were, to your points, right? A couple of not a lot of sleep nights or just busy days where, I'm like, oh, I get plenty of sleep. I sleep really well at night because it was a sprint in less than 3 months. But yeah, you can just do things. Matt's here just doing things. We're all here just doing things. Super excited. And I know that it meant a lot to Ed and a lot to PubKey to get Sailor down there, right? Signing the wall and spending some time with everyone. I think that was really special. And just the fact that everyone was so engaged, right? Anyone who wanted a picture with Sailor just kind of went up, and there was that professional photographer, Bud. And I mean, the pictures, it's like the live stream looked great. The photos looked great. There's just like so many incredible Bitcoiners. And that's probably, as I'm rambling, the whole point. Like, all of these guys and gals are Bitcoiners. And that's really what you saw brought to life. And super happy, super excited for January, and looking to do a lot of digital events between now and then. Not too many, Matt. I know once a month is probably too much, but yeah, lots of fun stuff on the horizon.
Yeah, we got to make sure you stop doubling your time on the digital conferences where you're going to be on there for a week straight interviewing people, because you just seem to keep increasing it. But the one thing that I think I saw that you guys did better than anyone that I've seen is you effectively curated a multi-day experience for people. So when you have an event like that and you have people that are traveling and coming in for multiple days, what you guys did was you created opportunities all throughout like a 3-day period for people to continuously interact with both the people that are participating at the conferences and all the attendees. It gave people that ability to get those personal connections with each other in casual settings. And I think that, for a lot of people, is what really makes the experience, is that level of access, to the people and the names that they've gotten to know over time in this space. And I think that was really incredible. One thing that was pretty funny to me, and I'll share this one, was I was talking to Tim's girlfriend backstage, and I asked her, I go, so what do you think when Tim comes to you with these ideas? And he goes, I'm going to throw a conference. I've never done it before, but I'm going to launch one. And she goes, well, by the time he told me, he'd already tweeted that he was doing it. So he was locked in, and there really wasn't anything I could do about it. So I found that to be pretty funny. Tim's an action first. He gets himself committed to something, and then he just follows through, which is incredible. So hats off to you, Tim.
Great work. One thing that I've noticed a lot of people talking about just broadly is they're like searching for a Bitcoin job. And what I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize is once I quit my job in reinsurance, and I didn't technically have a job, I found out, and I noticed real quickly, that I was actually working for the network. Like, if you're talking about Bitcoin, you're working for the network. If you're attending these conferences, you're working for the network. Like, you're putting your energy into the Bitcoin network. And I encourage people to reframe their perspective that way, because we're breaking walls in every sort of way, and there's a lot of opportunity in various different places to continue to infiltrate. Maybe it be traditional finance or media or what everybody on this screen is doing. Everybody's found their way to kind of push this network forward in a vein where their background provides more value. So you kind of have to start somewhere, and the easiest place to do it is by talking to people and attending these events. So I would encourage anybody to go talk to these people in person, it's a lot harder to infiltrate somebody's DMs than it is to meet somebody in person. I probably talked to 150 people while I was at your conference, Tim. And, most of them were just saying hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for doing what you do. And then a few of them were like actual potential value add business ideas or, conversations that were very intriguing. So I just would leave people with that. It's very valuable to attend these in person. Like if you want to break into this space, it's worth a little bit of investment. Yeah, New York's expensive, but you learn a lot. You get to meet a lot of people, and there's a lot of personal value and value to the network by being at those events.
Yeah, you brought up the idea of network effects and how, Bitcoin is, a monetary network in itself, and network effects like have these virality concepts involved to where they can actually go viral. And it kind of reminded me of, if you look at, Strategy's performance over the last 5 years or so, it's done incredibly well. And, I don't know how many like titans of industry, whether it's banking or technology or oil and gas or whatever else, where the leader of the industry is going out there and proclaiming, why Bitcoin or is important, and then highlighting their exact business model and saying, hey, copy me, borrow dollars, buy Bitcoin, issue preferred equity, buy Bitcoin. And still it took 4 years really for someone to copy them to, a similar scale. And it's just funny how it takes courage to adopt a Bitcoin standard and to adopt Bitcoin as a hurdle rate. But once it gets going and the network effects kick in and the virality starts to happen, then this thing could really get going.
And Bitcoin's strong, right? We're going to be here where the price of Bitcoin can be very volatile. And I'm sure we're going to have volatility to the upside, volatility to the downside. And we're going to have to figure out what to do among those different paths. But we have that optionality and we have a strong balance sheet. And the bringing together of these two balance sheets into one, it increases credit quality, increases optionality, increases everything that we could potentially do in terms of financing and capital market activity. And that's just an exciting place to be. Like we're not dependent on future cash flows of, some AI chips that our company is making. And, we have the competition of all these, different countries that are racing to get this stuff out the market. So yeah, it's just so powerful, and it will continue to grow and have this kind of snowball effect, just similar to, Strategy went from $500 million to $75 billion in 5 years. Now, what if you have 20 companies do that? And let's just say Strategy goes from 70 billion to 300 billion, and you have 25 companies go from 500 million to 75 billion. The landscape of the financial market looks completely different. So I'm just excited about the next 5 years and the next decade as everybody is operating in this space.
Yeah. And what's also interesting to me about just going back to the merger here for a second is that both sides could have done nothing. Have a massive amount of Bitcoin on each side. Like you could do nothing and you still are powered by Bitcoin. And so I think that even though I think this is extremely innovative and people are going to be writing about this and learning about this for probably decades, and it probably will kickstart over the next few years other M&A activity in this space, but not because it has to be done. It's because it's all about thinking through the goals here. The goals being, how do I increase on both sides Bitcoin per share over the long run? How do I outperform Bitcoin over the long run? How do I get the best balance sheet together to accelerate? Because we are in this digital gold rush era. So in this gold rush era, you are incentivized to be able to move faster. But even having 5,000 Bitcoin on your balance sheet, you're good. You're good at that point. But I think what I like about this space is that I know for you guys and for us, like, good isn't enough. It's like you're striving for excellence, right? And you're striving for true value maximization. You see teams of people that execute at that space, at speed, and what they're able to do, strategy, meta planets of the world, people that just, they don't stop. They're not satisfied with the status quo. And that is extremely energizing, even when you don't sleep for several days.
I think what you want to see out there, and what you're seeing with some of the companies that are separating themselves, is you want the teams that execute when everyone else is starting to think it's over, right? When you have true conviction in something, the time that you show that is not when everything's going great. It's not when the entire industry is ripping. It's not when Bitcoin's blasting through all-time highs. Everybody's excited during that time period. It's when things quiet. It's when things settle. It's when the market starts to lose faith. You see the premiums starting to come down. Everyone thinks it's over. And we've been through many of these cycles, right? This isn't the very first one. But I would say that this was one that started to get a little lower on sentiment than I've seen in the past. And what you want to see during these time periods are which companies are continuing to press forward, because that's what tells you that they have a long-term vision that they're executing towards. This is just a speed bump on the road to something that's much greater, right? It might slow a lot of people down, but it's also where opportunities created. This opportunity being one of them, right? This probably wouldn't have happened if Bitcoin was just blasting through all-time highs. And so the teams that are willing to tune out the noise, to look forward 10 years, 20 years, and look at what's possible and how they want to chart that course, and then continue to execute on that during the times when everybody else thinks it's time to play safe, those are the companies that you want to be on the ride with. And there's no doubt that these transactions are incredibly complex. I think that the market's been learning that now for several months, because we're seeing new types of financings coming out. We're seeing the timelines that come along with those. These are incredibly complex instruments. But that's why this isn't an area that you really come into for a trade. And if I had to highlight one thing that I think that the whole treasury movement may have initially caused a negative into the market, is I think it took away what people initially had already ingrained in their minds about Bitcoin, with it being an incredibly long duration asset, right? You're focusing on this for years. You're taking devaluing dollars, you're putting it in Bitcoin, you close your eyes, you don't care about the day-to-day because directionally you know where this is going. And when it became about equities, I think people turned on the trading mind. And they started looking at these as opportunities to trade. And there's a space for that. If that's your style, there's certainly a space for that. But for the people that are looking at this as a way to potentially outperform Bitcoin over the long term, you have to keep that Bitcoin mindset, right? There's going to be bad weeks. There's going to be bad months. There's going to be bad quarters. But what you're doing during that time and setting yourself up on a path for success and getting all the tools in place and the scale that you need to really be successful, if you continue to hyper focus on that and you execute every day of the week and you keep showing up, that's what's going to generate it. I can't imagine Saylor loved it when they were writing articles about, how he bet big and he lost and, everyone had ruled him out and strategy was going down and everyone's calculating his liquidation prices and all these things, right? And what did he do? He kept buying Bitcoin. He kept finding ways to buy Bitcoin and he pushed forward. And now he's in a completely different space. So I think that's what's so incredible about where we are in this market today, is this is going to be that time period, I think, that separates most of these companies and you find out exactly what they're made of here.
100%.
I think what you said, Ben, is, even in my view, why the hurdle rate started. And it was taking that long-term view in a market. And this isn't a criticism on any trader or investor, but a market that is so volatile that it invites and it requires a focus to not get into that mindset, but to keep your mind on the long-term goal here, both from the company's perspective of if the company itself is trying to focus on short-term movements over the course of a month, in my view, it will fail. And you've taken the longest duration trade that I think is as close to a sure bet as you could get, and you've given it to the volatility gods and you flipped a coin, and you can't do that. And that's why, we always are obviously talking about perpetual preferred equity instruments, right? A perpetual trade to be short the dollar and long Bitcoin on a levered basis, and thinking in years and decades and building something that's truly great, and knowing that while you're doing that, you're building something that's amplified Bitcoin, an amplified high volatility asset. And so you have to have deep conviction. You have to have an ability to handle that volatility, and understand that like others won't. And for me, like, look, I hope that every short-term trader makes money. The reality is that probably I think it's over 95% lose money. And that's just a very difficult trade. And so I hope from this education, it's like, hey, good Bitcoin treasury companies are focused on long term. We're not focused on the short term. That is the mandate. That is how we incentivize the team. We're going to pay the team better if they execute over longer periods of time, because we think that's actually achievable if you bring in a high talented group of people. But it's extremely important. And I do think that when you have these lull periods, you start to see people that have put on, trades that maybe they shouldn't. And I'm not negative about it. My point is I want to educate these people and say, hey, start to train your mind to think about the long run, because if you can do that, you can rebuild, and you can do it the right way, and not get rich quick, but get rich over the long run by aligning your own investment with the incentives of the investments that you're investing in.
I mean, that's how the whole world should prosper. They should get wealthy over the long run, not, the get rich quick is, you got a winner loser, generally in most circumstances. And like a sustainable path forward is just long trajectory over time, thinking about storing your wealth in a more efficient way. So yeah, definitely would emphasize that. Matt, you said one thing prior to this that I thought was also very profound. Both of these companies could have done nothing, right? Strive and Semler could have done nothing. And I thought that was a very profound, because this transaction worked because it was a Bitcoin company acquiring a company that had Bitcoin. If there were a non-Bitcoin company that were to come to Eric or you guys, Joe, you probably would have said no. And you're like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this isn't aligned with where I want to go. This isn't, like, I've got 5,000 Bitcoin, like, go away. But the sum of the parts can create something greater. And that's where the opportunity was. And that, I think that's pretty profound. It's like any future M&A in this space is going to be Bitcoin company to Bitcoin company. We're not going to, I think there's a very low likelihood that we see, these other companies come in with these bids to buy Bitcoin companies and then sell off the Bitcoin and do something else, because the people in charge and running these companies know that the Bitcoin has value and has value for the long run. So it's cool. There's this like synergy within the market itself to work together from that perspective. So yeah, really unique.
Yeah, I had one last thought on the idea of time preference and thinking long term. I think, a lot of people forget, or they don't really realize, like, Saylor and Strategy are partially pivoting away from convertible debt towards perpetual preferred equity, because they want to borrow money at an infinite duration. Like the 4 to 5 years or 6 years was too short term for them, and invited additional risks that they didn't expect or that they didn't prefer to have. And so that's why they've pivoted toward the preferred equity model. And so when you are out there trying to day trade a amplified version of Bitcoin that has a perpetual time horizon, that may not work out with you when Bitcoin happens to go up one day and MSTR or whatever happens to go down that day. It's like, that's not how that security was designed, and that's not necessarily how it's going to trade on a daily basis. So I find that funny. Like, that's part of the reason why he went to perpetual preferred equity, because his time horizon is that long. But with that said, like, he still executes, and all of these Bitcoin treasury companies do, and Strive and similar, like, execute on a daily basis to figure out creative, unique ways to increase Bitcoin per share. Because I completely agree, both companies could have just sat there, done almost nothing and probably outperformed the S&P 500, real estate and all these other fixed income and all these other traditional asset classes. Yet Bitcoin is the hurdle rate for capital allocation, and we want to generate more Bitcoin per share over time. And that's why, part of the reason why I'm so excited about this transaction with Strive and Similar.
Hell yeah.
Me too. I have nothing to add to that.
Let's wrap it there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
I
going to
agree.
say closing thoughts, or we'll wrap it. This has been the hurdle rate for September 22nd, 2025. Thanks everybody for listening, watching. For Ben Workman, Joe Burnett, Jeff Walton, and Matt Cole, I'm Tim Kotzman. We'll see you next week.